Well, hello everyone, and welcome to VLGA Connect and the weekly governance update with Stephen Cooper. Hello, Mr. Cooper.
Hello, Mr. Eddy. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. I'm really tempted to call this show Hanging with Mr. Cooper, but only a certain number of people would get that. So,
I've got an idea it's been done before too, Chris. So
very true. Very true.
To recycle old material.
Quite a bit to talk about this week, as usual. Busy time in the governance world. Firstly, I think we should point out we talked about the impending arrival of the VEC's candidate handbook, the Bible for candidates in the lead up to the election, and it's now out there.
Get excited, Chris. It's here and on the VEC website, and I would have thought on a lot of social media accounts as well. And as we've talked previously, the VEC is the voice of truth on matters relating to the election. So any candidates wishing to find out what they should do, there's the source. Is
it just me, Steve, or is it a ripping read?
It's fabulous.
I think it is.
There are nuggets in there, and in fact,
exactly.
I think all the excitement, Chris, is for people who don't read it, because then there's sort of some unpleasant surprises along the way. So, no, yes. Highly recommended.
And I think worth pointing out, in the candidate information sessions that you and I have been doing in recent weeks with many to come, a lot of the questions that get raised around the grey areas, I guess, of detail can be dealt with by reading the candidate handbook.
That's become really obvious the last couple of days, Chris. We've been able to point people to paragraphs directly in that book. So, yes, yeah. I agree completely.
I wanted to have a conversation this week with you about the election period, or not so much the election period or caretaker as it used to be known, which starts on the 22nd of September, but what I call that grey area between business as usual and getting towards the election period, and councils being able to act within the intent of not binding an incoming council inappropriately with the decisions they make in the lead up, because while it starts on the 22nd of September, you shouldn't be making a significant policy decision or a CEO appointment decision, etc., on the 21st of September, really, should you?
Generally speaking, no, Chris. I think there's and I might have said this last week, there's that fundamental question of, just because you can do it, should you do it? What's the right thing to do? And have we considered all of the ethical dimensions when a matter goes before the council for decision, particularly at this late stage? Because this is a time that's a real minefield in terms of less ethical conduct because of the impact of the upcoming election.
Yes. For some of us who've been around for a little while, the period of the election period or the caretaker period has contracted in time. I think the first time it was about 90 days, and then it came down to 57 or 60 or something, and now it's it's a reasonable 30. But that doesn't mean it should be open slather in those few weeks before the election period starts. And some councils, in fact, I'm only aware of one, you might be aware of more, have a pre-election period policy, don't they?
Yeah, I know of that one council, and they have extended their election period for another 30 days before the election period to try to sort of minimise the impact of that last minute decision making.
Yeah.
So I think it's really worthwhile on this topic thinking through what constitutes a good decision in local government. And when you're doing good, extensive policy development, for example, that time is spent framing the problem, going through a good model where stakeholders are consulted, coming up with options, arriving at a preferred option and recommendation, maybe consulting again, and then arriving at the best decision for the community. And I suppose it's a bit of a stretch if decisions or issues are raised in that period just before the election period, July, August, September, whether a council is actually able to go through that process and legitimately arrive at a decision that's best for the community. And, that might be in policy development, it might be in significant appointments, it might be in allocation of resources. So, there's real risks in terms of just being less ethical than we'd otherwise might like to, just because of the context.
Yes. And I guess really effective councils are the ones that discuss these matters really openly and are really clear about how they're going to approach this time in the cycle and involve their CEO, obviously, in those conversations, aren't they? Because one of the things that can happen, and I know you've got a view on this, is individual councillors bringing forward notices of motion that are potentially come out of left field?
Well, there's a transparency issue with notices of motion anyway, Chris, and you would expect me to say that if you come back to accountabilities, and it's in the Local Government Act, what's the role of the CEO? It includes providing advice to the council. So if a notice of motion pops up at the last minute about an issue, and there is not the opportunity for the community to see how the CEO and the executive have commented on that issue, you know, it's really often a shortcut through transparency. And of course, that's not to say that the council has to adopt the recommendation of the CEO. It's only a recommendation, but at least people can see quite clearly how the decision's been arrived at. Chris, I'm always mindful of what Edward de Bono, the great thinker, talks about, the intelligence trap. And that is that smart, articulate people can arrive at a view and then rationalise and articulate the appropriateness of that view at the exclusion of other considerations. And, you know, we've got often in organisations councillors who are good at their job as councillors because they are articulate and smart and can argue a position. But at a risky time coming up to an election, that can be quite dangerous.
You remind me of something I heard an international leader say this morning, which was basically, if you agree with me, you're smart. If you don't, you're stupid. So we don't want it to be that sort of realm of decision making, do we?
No, that's true. Actually, Chris, I was thinking too on a related topic that if you look to other industries, I know sometimes councillors at this period want to make decisions because they feel that the incoming council might not have the background that they have on a particular topic, and it's a public interest to make the decision. In a hospital, nurses do handover, and maybe councils could spend time thinking ahead and supporting the incoming council by recognising when issues shouldn't be dealt with and providing information for the incoming council for their consideration, which is not the officer's advice, but the community advice.
Yeah, that's a really good point, though, because the burden of handover really does fall to the CEO and the administration, because you have this clear cut-off and start of the new council, don't you?
And that's right. And then it's blinkered by the bureaucrat's view, which is not necessarily the councillor view, quite rightly.
Yeah. Another discussion perhaps for another day. Wanted to touch on a couple of brief things before I let you go. Standards of conduct, there's some work coming out of LGV soon, and the Minister has flagged with us that conduct is high on his agenda for focus in the new term. Councillors should really be getting involved, councillors with experience, getting involved in this discussion, shouldn't they, and providing their viewpoints? Oh,
they are the key stakeholders in this. If the standards of contact don't resonate with the councillor group, they won't work. And you've possibly heard the same as me, Chris. There are a lot of councillors getting on the Engage website, but a very small proportion are actually commenting. So in any way that the councillors can comment, either on the website, or you in fact may have some other information as to how councillors can get involved. I think that's really critical. Councillors shouldn't feel constrained on this particular topic of having to go via the CEO.
I think there's potentially a VLGA Connect live panel session possibly in that in the coming weeks. We do have one coming up next week, Steve, quick plug, around electoral regulations. The Electoral Commissioner is coming on, the Acting Chief Municipal Inspector. We have a lawyer, we have an experienced councillor to provide some viewpoints around how those regulations are going to drive this coming election campaign and period.
And rumour has it, Chris, that registrations are going off.
Going off, indeed. I hadn't heard that. You've got more information than me. Terrific. And the last thing I just wanted to mention is a note of congratulations to Graham Emerson, who up until recently was the Executive Director of Local Government Victoria and has now found a new post within state government.
What a terrific appointment. Congratulations to Graham Emerson, and props to his work, formerly at the Knox Council and other councils and at Local Government Victoria. I think it's a real testament.
Indeed, and he'll be missed at LGV, big shoes to fill.
Yes.
On that note, Steve, thank you very much as always for your insights. Look forward to speaking again soon here on the Governance Update.